The Ski would be a budget extreme sports game released for the PlayStation 1 in 2001 in Japan only, and this would fall under volume 62 of the simple 1500 budget series of games, and this series would be very popular in Japan itself. It gave consumers a more affordable way to purchase different types of games that would range in different quality, some being decent, others being, let's just say, not so good in many ways, but there would be some hidden gems. Even some AAA games later on would eventually be added to this category too, to make them more affordable. The majority of games in the series would usually end up being likes of mini games or like tabletop games, but on some occasions you would gain a lot of sports games, racing games, action games, shooters and the like. And like I said, there are some hidden gems in here that are worth a look. In saying that, however, this game here, The Ski, plays very similarly to another game that would have also fallen under this category, that would have been released in other regions also, simply under the name of Snowboarding, that essentially was developed by the same team of developers, as it uses the same physics and graphics engine from that game. The only difference is that you're using skis here rather than snowboards, but there are some slight differences in terms of the control dynamics and how it plays. I have covered snowboarding in a previous video, so I'll leave a link in the description, and was quite an interesting game to say the least. If anything, I found it to be a lot better than I thought. In many ways a hidden gem, because I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. So when I got the chance to play this game, I thought to myself, right, this will be hopefully more of the same. And in fairness, it does play quite well. It does have some really good graphics, a great level of detail, and some interesting modes, although I will admit that this game is a lot tougher than that snowboarding title, as the game modes are a lot more time focused, and let's just put it this way, this game does not hold your hand in terms of time, as it's very restrictive and limited, where you have to hit checkpoints, but you also have to execute different stunts that in some cases, depending on the mode you're playing on, will give you some additional time. But even at that, the time moves so quickly that in many cases you don't actually have enough time in order to complete each of the tracks. While there isn't as many per se in the game, you will unlock more the further into the game that you get, but the tracks are very long, so even to reach a checkpoint is a tough call. And I found that to be the case here, having tried many of the different modes multiple times and still struggling to even get past the first or second checkpoint. And then even when you play in other modes where you have to execute tricks and you have to gather coins, but you're also competing against another racer on track, the problem with it is that there's so much aggressiveness in the rubber banding AI techniques used that the other racer can literally zip past you in a moment's notice without even a thought in the world, which will add to the frustration. Like, you think you're far ahead in first place and they'll just whiz past you close to the finish line. It literally comes down to sheer luck as to whether you win a race or not. That's what I found from playing it, and for me that's one of the most frustrating elements within games like this, is the rubber band, and I don't know why developers use it so often. I know it's a cheap tactic, but it does take away from the experience, because sometimes you do like to win races just from out and out skill, not down to pure luck, which is a shame. I know they want to make it competitive, but in many cases they usually dilute the experience. Now, in saying that, it's not a bad game, far from it, but it is tricky and difficult to master, and because of those gripes that I mentioned, it may not be for everybody. It's easy to execute tricks, but it's just tough to complete races because you just have very little time. And even on some of the modes, if you do manage to hit the checkpoints and even execute a few tricks to increase your time limit, sometimes it's still just not enough. But aside from those gripes, everything else is perfectly fine with it, and it has a fairly quirky and unique soundtrack that might be worth listening to also, that will tie into it. If anything, it suits the gameplay style and will make that element more appealing. No, it's interesting, frustrating at times, yes, but definitely worth a go. And considering there's a lot of these extreme sports games that were released on the PlayStation, even a lot of winter sports games, like, make no mistake, even as I'm recording this video, I'm still finding a load of games that I never heard about in my life. I didn't even know they existed, and a lot of them are released only in Japan. And even when I think I've covered a lot of these games, more just seem to keep popping up. But I think that's the beauty of these older classic consoles, especially the PlayStation, and even the PS2 that came after it, has to be a treasure trove of goodies when it comes to unknown and very rare and obscure games. There's so many interesting aspects. As these two generations, I would definitely put down as the most most experimental periods within video games ever. There were so many unique and interesting ideas that yes, some will appeal to, maybe not to others, but they're there and they're worth trying just to gain an idea of the quirkiness around them. But yeah, at this rate I'll probably never be able to experience or witness all of these games, because the more I keep finding them, after a while more keep popping up just when I thought I've covered them all. But I suppose that's the fun of it all. That's the fun of the experience. While these aren't the best games in the world, they do offer some characteristics that might be appealing. But at the end of the day, I'll leave that up to you. But if you do like to explore more quirky games on the PlayStation, this is another one to try. With that being said, if you would like to see more videos around other unusual, rare and obscure games that were released on the PlayStation only in Japan, then make sure to stick around, as I will be covering more of them in the future. But if you want to see videos I have covered previously on the channel around these type of games, you can check out this playlist right here. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.